Let's talk about how technology is. Uh, I watched Terminator the other night, the most recent Terminator.
Yeah.
I think sometimes I'm living that movie because technology is not our friend sometimes.
No, and you know what I think too, Steve, is that now there's such a high demand, like all the time, because people are working from home, people are all over. There's such a high demand for it. So I think now is our opportunity. We've got to up our game a little bit in the technology. I think that we've been cruising for a while, like, oh yeah, well, we've
Yeah,
got the internet figured out, we've got this, and now it's like all of a sudden people are going to need to develop like faster and connections and all sorts of things, right? Like, I don't know.
yeah,
It's bizarre.
exactly. Well, I mean, I think it's forcing us to take a whole new look at everything.
Yes.
But and
Yes.
that's good. It's a positive because I think new advances in technology are going to come about. I was on a call today, as a matter of fact, talking to somebody that their entire company is shifting their traditional office structure
Mm-hmm.
because they've recognized, and we've talked about it on previous episodes, that the way that we were accustomed to working,
Yeah.
those norms are being challenged right now,
Yeah.
obviously for a variety of reasons, specifically because we're forced to deal with it because of the pandemic. But that a lot of companies are starting to say, hey, look, if we're able to survive and continue to work in some cases at a higher level of productivity,
Yeah.
and we don't necessarily have to incur this cost and expense of being in our digs, right, our office space. I
Yeah.
mean, they're rethinking a lot of things, and so this particular individual is responsible for some of the technology security aspects,
Mm-hmm.
and they're excited about the possibilities, but they're also frightened by it too because there's no control mechanisms for their employees, right? It's
That's tough. Yeah.
from a technology perspective, that's a concern. Obviously, business leaders are worried about the controls that they may have on their employees about getting stuff done when they need it done,
Yeah.
because now the
Exactly.
schedules are shifting, and how people are able to work, and the whole environment has shifted somewhat. So there's a lot of concerns about what all this could do to the new kind of normal. So
Yeah. You know what? I think the whole fact of the accountability comes into play and trust. Those two things, there's got to be a huge shift in trust and huge amount of trust given and received both on both sides.
yeah,
And then the accountability factor is how are you going to measure that accountability in this new way? And I mean, I guess, it's really interesting because I think that whereas before, like earlier this year, we thought it was going to be maybe 6 months. Well, here we are, almost in the eighth month of the year. And guess what? It's nowhere near being the end. And
no,
so I think that anything that we adapt and shift now, I mean, we're looking probably at a couple of years. I dare say that. I know it makes me feel like, oh my God, but I really do think because at some point in time, we're going to implement all these changes and we're not going to be quick to just go right back to the way it was. Because all of a
right,
sudden we're going to be all adapted and all like, okay, we're getting used to the newness and you can't just, flip the switch basically.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, how are the numbers over where you're at?
Well, up until last week, the numbers were really okay. I mean, they've done I have to give them a lot of credit. I mean, we were on lockdown much longer than you guys. And for us, we're actually only in phase two of opening up stuff. Now,
Oh,
granted,
wow.
people can go on because this is a big, July and August are big holiday or vacation months here in Europe, always has been. So, what they did is they just loosened up things a bit to let people only go to certain countries. There's only a list of countries that you can go to that whenever you come back, you don't have to quarantine.
Mm,
But it's interesting. A lot of people, but they did recommend please stay in your own country because I mean everything's so small here, right, Steve? It's like
hmm.
everything's so small that I mean, because I'm like 10-minute drive to Germany and 5-minute drive to Belgium. It's like crazy if you think about that.
Wow.
It's really so, but a lot of people ended up staying in their own countries to go on vacation. Now they are finding that numbers are starting to creep up, but nothing like it is in the state. But again, like I said, we're only like in the phase two of opening. Like phase
Yeah.
three is not coming till September, if it even comes at that time. They've said, listen, we're going to evaluate when people get back from holiday what's happening and then assess whether we're really going to do that or if we're going to wait.
So
So,
in the summer months because it's more of a cultural thing, right? Over in Europe for
Yeah,
people to take longer gaps of time off than we do
exactly.
here in the States, right? So
Absolutely.
it's possible that the numbers aren't yet reflective because
Yeah.
most people aren't back in the saddle, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, like some of the countries in Europe, like Belgium has started increasing. They've started increasing numbers. Here in the Netherlands, it's not yet. But yes, I think that probably in about 2 or 3 weeks' time, we're going to really start to see the actual situation because people are going to start coming back and that kind of thing. But I myself, like in the practices, I've had some people in the last week cancel because of flu symptoms, which I was like,
Really?
that's interesting because normally in the summertime, you don't really hear that many people with that, those kinds of
Yeah.
symptoms. So yeah, it's a bit interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so we started off talking about technology. We actually didn't even introduce the episode.
We're on fire
Every-
today.
Technology was like throwing us for a loop. So we were like, let's just boom, we just start
Let's just
talking.
start talking.
How'd you leave the house? Doing 65 miles an hour. That's what I did right there. So for those of you that are watching and listening, welcome to Conversations with Asha and Steve. I am Steve Harper, and with me is Dr. Asha Prasad. And clearly, we were so anxious to get into our conversation today, and we
Exactly.
just literally got into our conversation today. So it's almost as if you are getting an insider's view as to how we talk most of the time anyway.
Exactly.
We go from holy crap, this is broken, what the hell, to oh, check this out. And I mean, as all
Exactly.
good conversations probably should be, right?
Yes, that's exactly right. We cannot plan anything. That's
No,
all it
no, no. In fact, Asha was calling me like, hey, look, we're 20 minutes late for our conversation thanks to you bonehead,
is.
because
No,
I was caught up on another call, which was less important than my conversation with Asha, but unfortunately was detaining me unnecessarily.
that's
So,
really funny. It's funny, Steve. I just have to say this, and of course, this is something we don't plan. I mean, we plan the time that we get together, right? But
yeah,
we don't plan much of
yeah.
anything. But this is like the third or fourth time that you and I have coordinated our wardrobe colors. Like, like, do you realize this?
I actually think you said it wrong. We didn't coordinate, but we ended
No,
up with
but
the same color.
we unknowingly coordinated, like
Unknowingly. I didn't
telepathically.
hear that word. Yeah, no, absolutely. In fact, I pulled this shirt out of my closet today and I'm like, I never wear purple. Let me wear purple.
That's
And
hilarious.
bam. And then Asha showed up on my screen like, hey, I'm wearing purple. Tell us about your shirt though. Seek discomfort.
Seek discomfort. So this shirt, this is my motto. I will tell you this. When I
Okay.
moved here, it was very uncomfortable because I took this big leap of jumping into the deep end basically. And I was really uncomfortable in a lot of ways, a lot of situations all the time. And what happened as a result of that is that I started to really grow and expand myself and just really just learn new things and get more insights. And so it occurred to me a couple of years afterwards that I was getting used to being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so in that discomfort has come a lot of things. So I always say, you know what? I don't necessarily advise everybody to go seek discomfort, but I'm like, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. It'll
Yeah.
it'll serve you. It'll serve you in so many ways that you won't even, yeah, you don't even realize that.
Well, yeah, it's funny that you say that because I think a lot of times, and we've talked about it in prior episodes about trying to push yourself, right? To
Yeah,
do- to learn new things, discover new horizons, and I think that a lot of us as adults, we kind of feel like, oh, once we put on our adult costume, right, that okay, we got it all figured out, and there's nothing
exactly.
else to learn, nothing else to
Yeah,
experience. I mean, aside from the occasional trip to lands unknown, most of us don't uproot our entire lives and go
right.
live in the Netherlands, like some people do. But at the end of the day, it's a great reminder because
Yeah,
at the end of the day, if you're really not seeking that discomfort, are you really pushing yourself to grow in any capacity? So really
exactly.
apropos shirt, I think.
Yeah,
How
no,
did
it's definitely. I mean, you know what, Steve? It's not fun. I'm going to tell you, it's not fun being uncomfortable or having discomfort. But it is. I mean, if you think about even right now, we're all going through it right now. Who is comfortable with the situation right now? No one. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you are, Steve. I don't know. You look pretty comfortable. I'm not sure.
Well, you're right. Nobody's comfortable right now because everything
No,
is so unusual.
it is unusual, and it really does give us a big opportunity to like hit the reset button, which has already been hit several times now. But it's like, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to do things differently? How
Yeah.
are we going to change our businesses? How are we going to change our lives? How do we look at our health and our well-being? Like literally everything, like you just said a few minutes ago, everything has changed. Everything.
Yep. Well, and I think there's a lot of people right now, and obviously after being in this very unusual lockdown environment, this situation, and even as countries are starting to open up and restrictions are being lifted, I still think people are not comfortable, right? Even,
Absolutely.
especially here in the US, you see, there's definitely this fracture in terms of people that said, we should just open up and be completely back to normal as
Right.
much as possible. And damn the consequences. And then other people are like, hey, look, I don't even know if I want to send my kid back to school,
Exactly.
and the challenges of that situation. And the reality is, I think at the end of the day, it maybe, and you've said it on a prior episode, maybe this is nature's way of telling us to really do push the pause, look
Yeah.
at a reset, figure out where our priorities are and what we need to be spending our time and efforts towards,
Yeah.
and realizing that, if you were to ask yourself this question, say if this is what you're living right now is your reality for say the next 6 months to 24 months,
Mm-hmm.
how different do you need to live your life in order to maximize that time? Because there are some things that may completely be out of your control, which, for all intents and purposes, that's what the virus is. It's,
Yeah.
there's just this level of uncertainty whether you get a vaccination or not, right? Or a vaccine or not.
Exactly.
It's the fact that you're still going to be dealing with this for some time to come. So
Mm-hmm.
how do you leverage this time to take that step inward and kind of look and be reflective to figure out what's working, what's not working for you, and really what you want to do to come out of this thing better?
I agree with you, Steve. I mean, it is, I think that all things happen with a higher purpose. Sometimes we can't see it at the time, and sometimes we don't like what we see. But I think that this is one of these instances where it's like all of a sudden, usually we have this like on an individual basis where we kind of all get our little obstacles and setbacks and things like that on an individual basis. But if you think about it this way, the entire world got it at the same time.
Yeah.
It was like, boom, here you go. This is what we're doing. So I think it really is like a big, big wake up call to say, what are we doing? How are we taking care of ourselves, but also how are we taking care of each other? I think
Yeah.
that that's a huge thing that's coming about right now that we're seeing. Where's our compassion? Where's our
Yeah.
empathy for one another? And I mean, no matter who you are, where you are, can we empathize and feel compassion for one another? I think that's something that we kind of, as a human race, I don't know, not have missed completely, but we've gotten away from. We've gotten away from like our true essence of who we are as a global community as well.
Yeah, I
So
agree. I think that's well said, and an absolutely valid point in that this is an opportunity to do a reassessment about your individual place in humanity, right?
yeah,
And what what you want to be your personal representation, not only for how you respond and react to your friends and your neighbors, but
yeah,
really to the community as a whole. And it's interesting because it's when you start thinking about these kinds of things, they're really big topics. They're really
they
big,
are.
heady things. And I don't know about you, but for my coaching clients, I've got clients that are they're reassessing everything, right?
Yeah,
And they're recognizing that, maybe as much as they thought, getting the bigger house or that job promotion or that next
yeah,
big goal or obstacle to overcome was the priority of the day.
yeah,
Nature had this funny way of reassembling things in a way that
yeah,
basically kind of equalized the playing field for us all. And I
yeah,
recognize, it's not to oversimplify it because everybody's circumstances are vastly different. You and
mhm,
I, as entrepreneurs, we're trying to figure out how to keep our operations open, keep people employed, be
yeah.
able to keep our livelihoods afloat. And many people aren't that lucky, right? But
That's true.
so that it's not necessarily an equal playing field as it relates to day-to-day life,
Yeah.
survival circumstances. But how we respond and react, I think, is the opportunity for people to reassess how
Yeah.
they're conducting themselves, how they're promoting it, how what they're saying and what they believe relative to the political stance on the situation, or
Yeah.
what the World Health Organization has to say about it, or who I just even just this week kind of got into a bit of an intense conversation with someone about whether you could legitimately say China was completely to blame for this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's just so many different angles to really look at. And I think
Yeah.
that this is an opportunity for people to stop and do that.
Exactly. And you know what about that, Steve? One of the things that I look at that, I look at that from that perspective of the separateness. We are constantly trying to find our differences or point out our differences from, those over there, them over there, that kind of thing. And I think now more than ever, it's about, okay, you know what? There's no pointing fingers. It's like we're in it all together. Guess what? We're all in it together. What are we going to do? We can
Yeah.
either, like really come together and just like really join hands, so to speak. Of course, you can't do that with 1.5 meters or 6 feet distance. You know what I mean? Virtually.
For our American friends, that's 6 feet.
Oh, yes. I have something funny to tell you about that, but that will have to be offline. Anyway,
Okay.
um, but we have to come together now and say, okay, together, no matter where you're from or what country or whatever, what are we going to do? Now we've got to get out of it together. So
Yeah.
I think that idea of that separateness, and I think this is for a lot of my clients too, they're getting challenged on, hey, I thought this was important, but actually, you know what? Whatever I was working towards, it's not so important anymore. I've got this whole other thing that I think is more important, and more relevant to what's happening now. So it's very interesting because it's shaking us at the very core, actually.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's funny you said that, because I have someone that we both know in common that's an incredibly, I'll just say, selfish individual that has some
yeah,
struggles,
right,
looking at anything other than what they're trying to accomplish, right?
right.
And they're a hard charger, driven to, make huge strides in their career path. And what they've recognized, I think, through this, and it had a pretty, useful conversation with
Hmm.
us, that this is actually required this person to stop and to actually think about somebody other than themselves,
Yeah.
because they have seen how this situation has affected their clients, the
Okay.
employees, their partners, and of
Yeah.
course, family that they are separated from just by, geographic distance,
Exactly.
and recognized, how many times and opportunities they had to, like you said earlier, show care and compassion, and
Yeah.
just didn't.
It just didn't.
And
Yeah.
now that's all they want to do, because that's the priority. The business, the goal, the ambition is not a
Everything.
priority any longer. It's shifted. And
Yeah.
so if anything positive comes out of this,
Hmm.
is that more and more of those folks that maybe didn't stop to take note before may
Hmm.
have, just by the nature of the environment, be forced to stop and you know, take
That's
time to look and
that's
reflect.
true. That's true. I mean, you know what? Actually, Steve, we're getting in touch. We're getting back in touch with our humanity in a
Yeah.
way, right? Like we're
Yeah.
really getting back to the core of who we are as people. What are we doing here? Because one of the things that was interesting, I was having a conversation today with a patient of mine, and she was talking about the weather and how beautiful the nature is doing, like, as far as like the greenery and all of the stuff. And I said to her, I said, clearly, Mother Earth does not need us. Like, I mean, really, we
Yeah.
need her, but she does not need us really. And we started laughing about it because she's like, during our lockdown period here, we had gorgeous weather. I'm talking,
Yeah.
that was the only real big positive, that if you dared to go outside and go for a walk, it was just gorgeous outside. Um, but it's us getting back in touch with that humanity
Yep.
and finding out what really matters and what we can care for and who we can care for and how we can care for. And Yeah, I'm very hopeful that that's one of the biggest positives that will come out of this is that
Well, how do
togetherness, that
just
compassion.
out of curiosity, I mean, what are you telling your people to how to really embrace the time? I mean, it's one thing to say it, but really what are some ideas that you are sharing with your clients and your patients
Yeah.
and might share with our listeners that, how how do they take that time to reflect and actually leverage this time?
Well, one of the things that I'm encouraging all of them to do is to journal, to really get back into their journaling and write down, first of all, getting into that state of gratitude. I mean, writing down 10 things a day that they are grateful for. I mean, just
Yeah.
like non-negotiable, that's what you do. And you get into that state because what's happening is that they are starting to realize that they thought that they were being grateful or they thought that they felt grateful, but they actually weren't taking the time to really connect with what they were grateful for
Hmm.
and what they had. So it kind of like their goal or their happiness, whatever, was something that they were chasing like outside of themselves. And now they're realizing, okay, wait a second. And I'm encouraging them to bring it back to themselves to where they can really start to look at and reflect, okay, like what you were saying, Steve, like for us, we're in a position where we're running our businesses, we're keeping them
Yeah.
going and everything. Not everybody is in that state. But even whenever you may not be employed, you may have lost a job out of all of this, finding the little things that you are grateful for, anything. I mean, if you have food on the table, you have a roof over your head, whatever it is, the shirt on your back, whatever it is, find that and grow more in that and focus more on that. And that's what I'm really encouraging people to shift their focus on what they have and the positivity rather than getting sucked into all the negativity and what they don't have or what we
That's
all don't have.
Yeah, because it's easy to do that, right? And
Really
then that
easy.
has dire consequences as well because it pulls you into the sky is falling mindset, right? And I think a lot
Exactly.
of people have. I
Yeah.
mean, I know for a fact a lot of
Yep.
people I'm talking to have that right now.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And it's easy to get sucked into that because everybody's talking about that. Everywhere you look, everything that you read, everything you see, it's all about that. But that's why I'm really encouraging my people to really not only about the journaling, but also listening to things that are inspiring, that are motivating, that are uplifting every single day.
Yeah.
Like they can watch the news if they want to, they can do whatever, but at the same time, I want you to really counter that and you know what I mean, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. For as much bad stuff it goes in, put some more good stuff in.
It's kind of like for every 3 cookies that you eat, at least eat an apple. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Oh, that's what I've been doing wrong. Dang it.
I mean, come on.
Well, we didn't have a game plan when we pushed record today, predominantly because we have so much to share on a variety of topics, and this one seems to be on the top of mind for everybody because it looked like we were making some positive headways, and then we kind of take a backslide. And for sure, here in the U.S., we're experiencing that in a big way, and I think it's interesting. I think even since our last conversation, I mean, the anxiety level has risen so much here that I thought that, we just kind of push record and kind of see where our conversation took us today. And as always, it ends up finding some really interesting paths to follow. And
Yeah,
despite our technology glitch that we had at the very beginning, which is maybe still happening, I'm not sure because I
I
just
don't know.
closed my screen. But
Uh-oh.
you know, I always find these things, these conversations interesting. And the nice thing about, those of you that are listening to the podcast or tuning in, if you see this on YouTube, is that Asha and I come from, vastly different experiences because she's in the Netherlands. I'm in Austin, Texas. We see really uniquely different approaches to how our environments are
Yeah.
adapting and shifting and prioritizing and doing what they can to adapt to this very crazy, unusual time. And
Hmm.
so it's kind of good for us to kind of catch up and do a compare and contrast a little bit about what we're seeing, how your clients and patients are responding and reacting, what I'm seeing over here, from the folks that I
Exactly.
work with. And it's just an unusual time. And like you said, I mean, we thought a couple of weeks in we'd be 6 weeks max, then maybe it's a month. We just got to get to the summer, and now who knows? I mean, the
I
question
know.
mark is, are we is this a temporary bump, but then we're going to, have a little downtime, but then as soon as fall and winter hit, we're going to be like right back in the throes of it. Cause
I know.
who knows, right?
Who knows, Steve? That's the thing. But it is great that we can share and help people, the people that we're working with, that we're helping. And for those people that will be listening to this, whatever medium that they're using to listen to this, with podcast or on video. But um, it's something, what, just remember that we're all in this together. And Steve and I are very dedicated to helping people through
Yeah.
transitions. I would say like this, but fortunately, we've never had to deal with something like this before. But we do help people with transitions and changing, making big changes in their life, and things like that. So if you have any questions for us or any comments, or want to reach out to us to see how we could help you, please do so. They can tell people where they can find us, Steve, where would be the easiest place for them to find us.
Well, you can look us up on Facebook, Conversations with Asha and Steve, and you can find our profiles, individual profiles there on Facebook. We're both there. But also, we have a website called Conversations with Asha and Steve. And we have a new program that we actually launched. We had a mind, body, and business coaching program that was very successful. We're creating a list of people that want to get involved in the next time we run that program. So
Yep.
definitely check that out on our website. But right now, we're actually offering a kind of a unique opportunity where we're just doing what we'd really call kind of hotspot coaching for folks that are really struggling in a couple of different areas. You actually get Asha and I on the same call for an opportunity to have a conversation about whatever it is that you might be struggling with. Right?
Yeah.
Could be health related. It could be how to get out of this funk. Maybe you're experiencing something that you didn't anticipate as a byproduct of this pandemic that's
Yeah.
affecting you, your attitude, your motivation, your career. All these are things that Asha and I have really had a really strong basis of good experience, understanding of a very wide variety of coaching environments, and we bring a really unique perspective. And you get two coaches for the price of one on a call, which is pretty powerful. And so, Asha, how do people find out about that program?
So about that program, the best way is to go to our website and hit contact, Conversations with Asha and Steve, or you can email us at info@conversationswithashaandsteve.com. That would
Yep.
probably be the best way for people to contact us about that.
Yeah. And if you're struggling with anything, we'd love to have a conversation with you. I think you'll find
Yeah.
a definite value. It can be a single session, it can be multiple sessions, whatever makes the most sense for you. Like Asha mentioned, I mean, we're just very passionate and committed to helping people wherever they're at with whatever they're dealing with. And so definitely check us out in that regard if we can help you.
Perfect.
All right, Asha. Well,
Great.
I know you're going to be off for a little bit of time. I am as well, just because we've got some
Yeah.
projects we're trying to wrap up on our own individual
Yeah.
basis. Not like we get to go on vacation or anything. That's
I'm going to the living room.
oh, sweet. Yeah. I mean, I hope it's not crowded.
Yeah, it better not be.
Do you have to make a reservation there, or is that do you just have
No, that's the great thing about it.
Yeah, I think I'm doing the same thing.
Okay, sounds good.
Mine's only 3 stars. I hear yours is 5 stars though.
No, it's been downgraded. It's been downgraded.
Those Yelp reviews or hotel.com
I
not too kind
know,
to you or what?
I got to work on that.
Hey, I would complain to management. That's what I would do.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
All right. Well, until next time, thanks for joining us with Conversations with Asha and Steve. Take care.
We love
I,
software.
no, we don't. I
Yes.
do not. I'm not wearing pants, so I'm wearing shorts. Just kidding. Just